This warship was a myth, until it appeared in battle. The galaxy had heard the legends for centuries. Whispers carried from one star system to another, stories of a warship so advanced, so powerful, that it seemed to be nothing more than myth. Its name was the Sovereign, and it was said to be the last of its kind, a relic from an ancient human civilization that had once ruled the stars. The story began long before the war, when humanity had been a force of peace. Their empire spanned hundreds of systems, united under a single banner, their influence stretching farther than anyone could imagine. But that was before the collapse, when the galaxy fractured into warring factions. Humanity's once proud civilization fell, its warships vanished, and the Sovereign, its flagship, was lost to time. Over the years, the myth of the Sovereign had become something of a cautionary tale, a reminder of the past that no one truly believed, until now. The battle at Gary's Prime. The Gary system was a flashpoint in the ongoing war. The unified force of the Zark's Dominion, a militaristic alien species, had been sweeping across the galaxy, and their assault on Gary's Prime was just another victory in their campaign to dominate the stars. The planet was a strategic prize, rich in resources and home to a population that was more than capable of defending itself. But against the might of the Dominion, the Gary's fleet was outmatched. As the Dominion's ships closed in on the planet, they prepared for the final bombardment that would decimate the planet's defenses. The Gary's forces had one last ace up their sleeve, an ancient warship they'd never expected to see in action. But even their most hopeful generals feared it wouldn't be enough. Just as the Dominion's fleet launched its assault, a strange signal broke through the noise of the battle. Incoming ship, unknown origin. The Dominion fleet commander, Raxar, snorted in disbelief. Another one of these false alarms. Keep firing. But then, a blip appeared on their scanners, a ship unlike any other. It was massive, over twice the size of their largest dreadnought. Its design sleek yet somehow ancient, the hull glistening with an unearthly shine. It moved faster than any ship they had ever encountered, defying all known laws of propulsion. It was the Sovereign. The return of the Sovereign. Captain Lyra of the Gary's fleet stared in awe as the Sovereign appeared on the horizon, its massive silhouette cutting through the darkness of space like a divine apparition. The crew had no idea where it had come from or how it had survived the millennia. All they knew was that they had to take advantage of this unexpected gift. All stations, prepare for battle, Captain Lyra shouted. We have one shot at this. People, we can win this. The Dominion's ships had already taken aim, their weapons charging with lethal intent, but the Sovereign was no ordinary vessel. As soon as it came into range, it unleashed a barrage of energy blasts that obliterated the closest Dominion warships, leaving nothing but debris in its wake. Its weapons systems were far beyond anything the Dominion had ever encountered. The ancient technology of humanity's greatest warship ripped through their ranks like a knife through paper. The Dominion fleet was no match for the superior firepower of the Sovereign, and in mere minutes, their forces were in disarray. The ship's energy shields pulsed with a strange blue light, effortlessly absorbing the enemy's fire. It moved with grace, as if its artificial intelligence had anticipated every move of the Dominion. In a matter of hours, the once proud fleet of the Zark's Dominion was reduced to a smoldering wreckage, their commanders retreating in fear. The myths had been proven true. The Sovereign had returned, and with it, humanity's legacy. The aftermath. The battle was won, and Gary's Prime had been saved, but the appearance of the Sovereign did more than secure a victory. It sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. The war was far from over, but the Sovereign's return changed everything. The Dominion, once unstoppable in their conquest, now had a new threat to contend with, and every faction, from the smallest rebel groups to the largest empires, knew that the legend of humanity's greatest warship was no longer a myth. It was a reality. Humanity had returned to the stars, and with it came a symbol of power and resolve. The Sovereign was more than a ship, it was a promise. The galaxy would no longer be ruled by the strongest alone. There were forces at play that no one had counted on, and the Sovereign was only the beginning. As for Captain Lyra and her crew, they knew that the war was not over, but with the Sovereign at their side, they felt something they hadn't felt in a long time, hope. And that was something the galaxy hadn't seen in centuries. End. The warship's legacy, rising from the ashes. After the victory at Gary's Prime, the Sovereign became a symbol of humanity's return to power. The legends that had once been whispered in dark corners of space were now undeniable truths. As the war raged on, the ancient ship's very presence became a rallying point for every faction that had suffered under the Dominion's brutal reign. The question on everyone's mind was not whether the Sovereign could defeat the Dominion, it had already proven that. No, the real question was, what would humanity do next? A new dawn for humanity. Back at the Gary's Prime Fleet headquarters, Captain Lyra paced the command center, staring at the tactical holograms that displayed the movements of Dominion forces across the sector. The battle was far from over, and she knew that the Sovereign was only one ship. A single warship couldn't turn the tide of an entire galactic war by itself. But she could feel it, the energy, the potential that was within humanity's grasp. If the Dominion feared the Sovereign, then they would be terrified of what would come next. "Prepare to send the signal," Lyra ordered, turning to her communications officer. "It's time to let the galaxy know that humanity's return isn't just a rumor. We are back." The officer nodded, sending out a transmission to every corner of the galaxy, using the ancient communications network once controlled by humanity's empire. The message was simple, but it carried weight. Humanity is not extinct. We will rise once more. The Sovereign has returned, and with it, our people. Prepare for what comes next. The call for allies. The Dominion was not just a military force. It was an empire, a cold, calculated machine that had crushed everything in its path. But what they didn't understand was the human spirit. The Zark's Dominion may have conquered the stars through fear, but fear was never something that lasted long in the hearts of humans. Across the galaxy, once silenced rebel groups, distant colonies, and oppressed planets began to rise. Word spread quickly, the Sovereign wasn't just a ship. It was a symbol of the human will to survive, to fight, to overcome impossible odds. With every passing day, new allies rallied to its cause. One of the most surprising of these was the Ryloth Coalition, a species known for their distrust of all outsiders, especially humans. Yet, seeing the might of the Sovereign firsthand and witnessing humanity's resilience, they threw their lot in with Captain Lyra and her crew. "We've seen what you're capable of," said Admiral Trix, the leader of the Ryloth forces, her eyes burning with resolve. "The Dominion has to fall. Together, we can make sure of it." The Dominion strikes back. The Sovereign and its growing fleet of allies had become a serious threat to the Dominion's supremacy. But the Dominion was not one to back down from a challenge. They began to pour every available resource into taking down humanity's flagship. They didn't just want to destroy the Sovereign, they wanted to crush the very idea of human resistance. A massive fleet, led by the Dominion's most feared warship, the Annihilator, was dispatched to eliminate the threat once and for all. The battle that followed would go down in history as one of the most legendary in the galaxy's tumultuous history. The final confrontation. The vast expanse of space between the Dominion's fleet and the Allied forces was littered with wreckage from previous skirmishes. As the two fleets converged, Captain Lyra's voice rang out over the comms. "All ships, engage the enemy. We fight for every star, every planet, every life we've ever known." The battle was brutal. The Sovereign's advanced weapons systems tore through the enemy ranks, but the Dominion had learned from their previous defeat. They adapted quickly, launching waves of fighters and specialized ships designed to counter the Sovereign's unique abilities. The Annihilator, a dreadnought the size of a small moon, loomed on the battlefield like a massive, menacing shadow. Its weapons were designed to destroy planets, and it had already shattered countless worlds in its wake. But even it had not faced a force like humanity's newest alliance. The battle seemed like it would be a stalemate until the unexpected happened. In a daring move, Captain Lyra ordered a direct assault on the Annihilator. With the Sovereign's advanced AI guiding their every move, they weaved through the Dominion's defenses, landing a series of devastating blows to the heart of the enemy flagship. A massive explosion rocked the Annihilator, and the once imposing warship began to crumble from within. The victory was theirs. The galaxy's new hope. The fall of the Annihilator was a turning point in the war. The Dominion, now leaderless and fractured, began to retreat. The galaxy watched in awe as the myth of the Sovereign turned into an undeniable truth. Humanity was no longer just a distant memory, they were back, and they were here to stay. The war was far from over, but with the return of the Sovereign, the galaxy had a new hope. It was a symbol that the stars were not the Dominion's to control. They were everyone's, and no one, no matter how powerful, could take that away. Captain Lyra stood on the bridge of the Sovereign, looking out at the stars. "We've only just begun," she said quietly, her voice filled with the weight of the responsibility they now carried. The Sovereign wasn't just a warship. It was a beacon for every civilization that had been silenced by fear, for every species that had been crushed by oppression. Humanity was back, and with their warship leading the charge, they would ensure that the galaxy would never again fall under the yoke of tyranny. The myth had come to life, and the war was about to change forever. End. The Sovereign's Gambit, a galaxy united. The victory at the Battle of the Annihilator had sparked more than just a temporary surge of hope. It ignited something deep within the galaxy's inhabitants, an unshakable belief that freedom could be won, that they could fight back against the Dominion and any force that sought to impose its will through fear. The legend of the Sovereign grew in the weeks following the battle, no longer merely a myth. It had become the rallying cry of every oppressed system. The Zark's Dominion had been dealt a grievous blow, but they weren't finished. The fight was far from over. However, humanity's presence in the war, led by the now legendary warship, had shifted the balance of power. A new strategy. Captain Lyra stood in the war room, studying the tactical displays. The Dominion had retreated for now, but she knew they would come back stronger. They always did. Her advisors were all gathered around, their faces grim. "We've taken their flagship down, but their forces remain vast. We need to hit them where it hurts," said Admiral Trix, her Ryloth coalition forces providing invaluable support. Lyra nodded. The Sovereign was a symbol, but to win this war, we need more than a symbol. We need a plan, a decisive strike. "We've been coordinating with the other rebel groups, the ones who were once too scattered to pose a serious threat," said Commander Rax, a human tactician who had been working closely with Lyra since the Sovereign's return. "The Dominion's central command is spread thin. Their core worlds are undefended." Lyra's eyes sharpened. "That's our opening. A direct strike to their heart." The room fell silent. Every leader knew what this would mean, an all-out war against the most powerful military in the galaxy. But it was a risk worth taking. "We need to call in every ship, every fighter, every last ally we have. We hit them fast, we hit them hard, no warning, no mercy." The room hummed with the energy of a galaxy on the brink of revolution. The assault on Zalgar Prime. Zalgar Prime, the Dominion's central world, was a fortress. It housed the command structure of their empire and was heavily fortified. To strike at its heart was an act of unimaginable audacity. But that was exactly why it had to be done. The Dominion had underestimated humanity once before. They wouldn't make that mistake again. The fleet, a coalition of forces from across the galaxy, gathered in the depths of uncharted space, waiting for the signal. Thousands of ships, from the Sovereign to every last fighter and frigate, hovered in anticipation. The time had come. "Launch all ships." Lyra's voice rang through the calms. "For the galaxy, for freedom." As one, the fleet shot forward, faster than the enemy could anticipate. The Sovereign, with its unmatched firepower, led the charge, its weapons systems lashing out in blinding bursts of energy that tore through Dominion defenses with ruthless precision. But the Zark's Dominion was prepared. They had anticipated an attack, just not this soon. Vast swarms of defensive ships surged to intercept, launching waves of deadly fire in retaliation. The battle that unfolded was like nothing the galaxy had ever witnessed. The skies above Zalgar Prime were filled with explosions, the sounds of war echoing across the cosmos. Every inch of space became a deadly battleground. The Sovereign, however, stood at the center, a shining beacon of human might and ingenuity. Lyra's voice, calm and precise, guided the battle. "Focus fire on the command towers. We need to cripple their leadership." The final push. As the battle raged, the Dominion's massive command citadel on Zalgar Prime came into view. It was surrounded by layers of defense, both in space and on the ground. The Sovereign fired at the citadel's shields, but they held firm. The final phase of the assault required the full force of the coalition. "We need to send a strike team inside," Lyra said. "Get our best fighters on the ground. The Dominion leaders must be neutralized." Admiral Trix volunteered her forces for the mission, leading a battalion of Ryloth shock troops in boarding shuttles. slicing through enemy defenses. The team was made up of elite fighters from every race, determined to face their foes on the ground and in the shadows of Zalgar's core. The mission was grueling. The Dominion had entrenched itself within the Citadel's vast labyrinthine halls, but humanity's forces pushed forward, cutting through resistance. With every step, the myth of the Sovereign became a reality that struck fear into the Dominion's commanders. Finally, after hours of brutal combat, Admiral Trix and her team breached the central command room. The Dominion's leadership, those who had orchestrated the war, the death, and the suffering, stood before them, terrified. "This is the end," Trix said, her weapon aimed at the leader of the Dominion. "High General Tharvok, your empire falls today." The collapse of the Dominion. With the death of Tharvok and the fall of the Dominion's command structure, the galaxy erupted in celebration. But even as the victory was secured, Lyra knew the war wasn't truly over. There would still be remnants of the Dominion to fight, pockets of resistance that would seek to reclaim their former strength. But for the first time in centuries, the galaxy had hope. Humanity had proven that the old myth was real, that one warship, led by a single captain, could challenge an empire. "We didn't just defeat them," Lyra said as she stood on the bridge of the Sovereign, watching the fires of battle burn out in the distance. "We gave the galaxy something it hasn't had in centuries. We gave it freedom." Her crew stood with her, unified by the cause that had brought them together. Humanity, once thought to be lost in the stars, was now the heartbeat of a new rebellion, a rebellion that would continue to spread, bringing hope and strength to every system it touched. The war rages on. Though Zalgar Prime had fallen, the remnants of the Dominion still controlled several strongholds. Yet every day that passed, more systems joined the growing coalition, and with each passing victory, the legacy of the Sovereign spread like wildfire. Humanity's return to the stars was no longer just about the Sovereign itself, it was about the people, their allies, and the galaxy united in a common cause. The war was far from over, but humanity had shown that it could stand against the greatest forces the galaxy had ever known, and it would never again be a mere myth. End. The Sovereign's reckoning, a new era. The war had taken its toll. Systems once untouched by conflict were now scarred, their populations devastated by the onslaught of battle. The Dominion had crumbled, but in its place, a new challenge had arisen, one that would test humanity in ways they hadn't anticipated. With the fall of Zalgar Prime and the shattered remnants of the Dominion scattered across the galaxy, the power vacuum left behind was enormous. But unlike the swift collapse of their enemies, humanity's path forward was unclear. The myth of the Sovereign had given hope to countless worlds, but now it was time to build something lasting, something that could prevent the galaxy from falling back into chaos. The Council of Unity. In the wake of the war, Captain Lyra had called for a summit. A council of representatives from every faction that had fought alongside humanity's forces. It was time to forge a new future, but that future would require cooperation, understanding, and the kind of unity the galaxy had never known. The council chamber aboard the Sovereign was filled with delegates from across the galaxy, Rylothians, Haxkarans, human diplomats, and even once hostile species who had been brought to the negotiating table by the resolve and leadership shown by the Sovereign. Lyra stood at the head of the room, her mind focused, her gaze sharp. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have won the war," she said, her voice carrying the weight of countless victories. "But now, the real challenge begins. We must rebuild. We must protect the fragile peace we've fought for, and ensure that the tragedies of the past never happen again." Her words struck a chord with everyone in the room. No longer were the delegates divided by old grudges or historical enmities. They had seen the cost of war, they had fought side by side, survived side by side, and now they stood together in the wake of victory. "We are no longer just individuals, species, or factions," Lyra continued. "We are a galaxy united by the belief that we are stronger together. This council is the first step toward a new era of peace, one where power is shared, not hoarded, where the might of the strongest is not used to oppress the weakest." The representatives nodded in agreement, though the room buzzed with underlying tension. Trust had been earned through bloodshed, but peace, true, lasting peace, would take time. Diplomacy, like warfare, was a process, and one that required the same determination humanity had shown on the battlefield. The rise of the Federation. Months passed as the various factions worked to lay the foundation for a united galaxy. The Sovereign and its crew became symbols of this new order, leaders not just in war, but in diplomacy. Slowly, the Federation began to take shape. Its core values centered around cooperation, mutual defense, and shared governance. The Council of Unity was codified into a formal assembly, the Galactic Federation Assembly, where representatives from all corners of the galaxy would come together to decide on matters of peace, trade, and justice. But not all were content with the idea of unity. The shadow of rebellion. While the Federation formed, there were still factions that clung to the old ways. Several former Dominion warlords, too proud to accept defeat, retreated into the outer fringes of known space, building armies in secret, plotting the downfall of the fragile peace. One such warlord, Carrick, had been one of the Dominion's most feared generals. His hatred for humanity burned hotter than ever, and he had gathered a fleet of mercenaries, pirates, and former Dominion soldiers, determined to bring down everything the Federation had worked to build. Carrick's fleet, known as the Dark Legion, struck first with a surprise raid on the Federation's Outer Rim territories. The attack was swift, brutal, and calculated. Hundreds of civilian ships were destroyed, entire colonies wiped out. It was clear that Carrick sought to prove that peace had no place in the galaxy, a place he intended to reshape through violence. But the Sovereign was not idle. Once again, the ship that had become a symbol of hope and resistance would lead the charge. Captain Lyra was determined to show that the Federation would not bend in the face of rebellion. The battle for the new order. Lyra stood on the bridge of the Sovereign, her eyes scanning the latest tactical reports. The Federation's forces were rallying to counter Carrick's forces, but they needed to strike quickly. His forces were numerous, and they would not hesitate to destroy anything that stood in their way. This time, we'll finish what we started, Lyra said, her voice steady, her resolve unshakable. We'll show them that the galaxy isn't for the taking, it's for all of us. The fleet was ready. The Sovereign's advanced systems had been upgraded since the last great battle, its weaponry now more deadly than ever. But it wasn't just the ship that was the key to victory, it was the alliance they had forged. This time, it wasn't just humanity that fought, it was the galaxy itself. The battle took place in the asteroid belt near the planet Ferris. Carrick's fleet, outnumbering the Federation's forces, launched their attack with brutal efficiency. But this time, they faced an enemy united, determined, and prepared. As the first volley of missiles launched, the Sovereign surged forward, leading the charge, its shields absorbing the first wave of fire. Its weapons cut through the Dark Legion's ships, one after another, as the Federation's fleet followed suit, working together to strike at Carrick's forces. In the heart of the battle, Captain Lyra made the call, a direct assault on Carrick's flagship, the Scourge of Night, the most terrifying warship in the galaxy. With precision, the Federation forces cut through Carrick's defenses, breaking the back of his fleet. At the same time, Admiral Trix and the Ryloth forces launched a ground strike on Carrick's secret base, capturing key intelligence and sabotaging his supply lines. Carrick was cornered, his forces shattered, and his ambitions crushed. With a final, decisive blow, the Sovereign tore through the Scourge of Night's defenses, sending it into a spiral toward the planet's surface. The Dark Legion had been defeated. A new hope. The battle was over, but the real work was just beginning. The defeat of Carrick and the Dark Legion had been a triumph, but it was also a reminder that there would always be those who would challenge the peace the Federation fought for. Captain Lyra, standing on the bridge of the Sovereign, looked out over the galaxy, knowing that the challenges ahead would be many. But with the Federation now firmly in place, and humanity standing as the torchbearers of peace, she knew that the galaxy had a future, one that was no longer dictated by fear. "We've come a long way," she said quietly, her voice filled with pride, "but this is only the beginning." The Sovereign turned its course toward the stars once more, its engines powering up for the next chapter in humanity's story, a story of unity, resilience, and a galaxy that would never again fall to tyranny. End. The Sovereign's legacy, a galaxy reborn. The defeat of Carrick and his Dark Legion was only the beginning of the Federation's long journey toward lasting peace. Though the immediate threat had been neutralized, there were still factions in the galaxy that harbored resentment toward the Federation. The scars of war ran deep, And not everyone was willing to embrace the new order that had emerged from the ashes of the Dominion. But the myth of the sovereign had grown into something greater. It was no longer just the symbol of humanity's return to power, it had become a beacon of hope for all those who longed for a galaxy free from tyranny. A fragile peace. The Galactic Federation, though stronger than ever, was fragile. With each new world that joined, each new system that pledged their allegiance, there was still resistance. Pirates and mercenary fleets, remnants of the Dominion's military, and even former warlords who had tasted power under the old regime all posed a threat to the newly formed unity. Lyra knew the work wasn't done. As she stood on the bridge of the Sovereign, looking out into the vast expanse of stars, she couldn't help but feel the weight of the responsibility she carried. Peace was a hard-won thing, and it could easily slip away if they weren't vigilant. "We've brought the galaxy back from the brink," Lyra said to her crew, her voice firm. "But we need to ensure that what we've fought for survives. Every system, every planet, every species must have a voice. This peace cannot be held at gunpoint. It must be earned, one day at a time." The crew of the Sovereign nodded, aware of the challenges that lay ahead. They had built something incredible, a new era of cooperation, but peace, as Captain Lyra knew, was a fragile thing. It needed protection, it needed leaders, and most of all, it needed time. The new frontiers. The Federation's first great test came when an uncharted sector of the galaxy, previously home to isolated colonies, was discovered to be rich in resources, an opportunity that was both a blessing and a curse. Powerful, independent factions from outside the Federation began to circle like vultures, eager to take control of this new frontier. Captain Lyra was called upon once again to navigate the diplomatic intricacies of these new territories. The Federation could not afford to alienate these new worlds, but at the same time, they couldn't let them fall into the hands of those who would exploit them for power. A series of meetings were scheduled with leaders from the new colonies, but Lyra knew it would take more than words to keep these worlds from slipping back into conflict. She needed to show them the value of unity, of collaboration. "The Federation has proven its strength in battle," Lyra said to the assembly of colonial leaders. "But true power is not just in force, it is in the strength of cooperation. We must work together to ensure that these new frontiers are built on trust, not fear." It was a delicate balance. Trust was a hard thing to build, especially in a galaxy so scarred by centuries of war. But the Sovereign had come to symbolize that very possibility, that even in the darkest times, unity could be forged. The shadow of the past. Despite the Federation's progress, a shadow loomed over their future. The remnants of the Dominion, though fractured and leaderless, still had a presence in the galaxy. Warlords and rogue generals, some with grudges against humanity, continued to fight for control in the far reaches of the galaxy. They were like embers of a fire that had long since been extinguished, yet still capable of igniting new flames. Lyra was reminded of the danger when an unprovoked attack on a Federation outpost near the border of Dominion-held space resulted in heavy casualties. The attack was precise and deadly, orchestrated by an unknown faction. The Sovereign was dispatched immediately to investigate, but the deeper they went into Dominion space, the more they realized that this was not an isolated incident. The remnants of the Dominion were regrouping. Lyra called for an emergency session of the Federation Assembly. "We can't ignore these attacks," she said as she stood before the council. "There's something more here than just rogue factions. The Dominion may be gone, but its influence still lingers in the dark corners of the galaxy. We need to strike at the heart of this unrest before it grows into something worse." The Federation's newly formed military arm, the United Fleet, was prepared for the mission. However, Lyra knew that they couldn't simply engage in another war with these factions. If they were to truly secure peace, they needed to cut the head off the serpent, not just strike at its tail. The heart of the darkness. A covert operation was launched to infiltrate Dominion space, led by Captain Lyra and her crew. The Sovereign entered the heart of the enemy's territory, where the team uncovered a terrifying truth. A clandestine group of former Dominion leaders, calling themselves the Last Dawn, had formed an alliance with criminal syndicates and mercenaries. Their goal wasn't just to reclaim lost territories. It was to reignite the fires of war across the galaxy. This was no simple rebellion, it was a well-organized, shadowy organization that sought to bring about a return to the old order, and they had the means to do so. The Federation's enemies had begun to rebuild weapons that could rival the Sovereign itself, threatening the fragile peace humanity had fought for. "We can't let them get any further," Lyra said as the information was revealed to her team. "We must eliminate the Last Dawn and their plans before they can launch a full-scale attack." The Federation couldn't afford to wait for the Last Dawn to strike first. It was time for the galaxy's united forces to take a stand, before the peace they had fought for was shattered forever. The final stand. The Sovereign led a coalition of forces into the heart of Last Dawn's stronghold. The battle that ensued was intense, worse than anything they had faced before. The Last Dawn's forces were skilled, ruthless, and heavily armed, but humanity's resolve, and the strength of the Federation, pushed them forward. With the help of their allies, the Sovereign's crew infiltrated the enemy's command center, neutralizing key targets, and breaking through their defense lines. The final showdown came in the heart of the enemy's fortress, a place where war machines were being constructed in secret. It was here that Lyra faced the leader of the Last Dawn, General Cyrus, a figure who had once served the Dominion and now sought to resurrect it in all its power. Their confrontation was inevitable. "You are a fool, Captain," Cyrus spat, his eyes filled with contempt. "The galaxy was never meant to be ruled by weak ideals. The strong must rule." Lyra's voice was steady, unwavering. "The strength of the Federation doesn't come from domination. It comes from unity, and it's stronger than any empire you could ever build." With that, the Sovereign's advanced weaponry wiped out the Last Dawn's last remaining forces, and General Cyrus was captured, his vision of tyranny extinguished once and for all. A new era of peace. The defeat of the Last Dawn marked the end of the last remnants of the Dominion. The Federation had proven, once again, that it was not a force to be trifled with. The galaxy had been pushed to the brink of destruction, but humanity's strength, courage, and unity had turned the tide. As Lyra stood before the Federation Assembly once more, she felt the weight of everything they had achieved. There would always be those who sought to undermine peace, but now, humanity's resolve was stronger than ever. "We've shown that peace is possible," Lyra said, "and we'll defend it for as long as it takes." And so, the galaxy entered a new era, one of hope, unity, and the knowledge that the myth of the Sovereign was no longer just a story. It was the future. End. The Sovereign's legacy, Guardians of the Stars. The defeat of the Last Dawn had secured the Federation's grip on peace, but it also revealed an undeniable truth: the galaxy was still far from united. The remnants of old powers continued to emerge from the shadows, and while the Sovereign and its crew had become legendary, there were those who still sought to fracture the fragile alliance they had built. Even with the Sovereign standing as a symbol of hope, the true test lay ahead. Would the Federation's unity hold in the face of new, unknown threats? Could the ideal of peace stand against the weight of an entire galaxy's complex history? A new threat, the Veil Syndicate. A few years after the victory over the Last Dawn, reports of mysterious, highly advanced ships began to surface in the farthest reaches of Federation space. These ships were unlike any the Federation had encountered before: dark, stealthy, and equipped with technology that far outstripped anything known to the Federation. It was clear that this wasn't an isolated pirate faction or rogue warlord. These ships were organized and relentless. The Federation scrambled to understand the nature of this new threat, but all attempts to track or intercept these ships failed. No signals, no distress calls, nothing. They moved in silence, leaving only destruction in their wake. Their tactics were surgical, precise. Entire colonies disappeared overnight. Their populations vanished without a trace. Lyra and the Sovereign were once again called to lead the investigation. Her crew, seasoned from their previous battles, knew the stakes could not be higher. As they ventured into the unknown, the mysterious ships seemed to follow them, always lurking just out of reach. It wasn't until a major civilian colony on the fringes of Federation space was destroyed that the true nature of the threat was revealed. The culprits were not pirates. They were a secretive organization known only as the Veil Syndicate, a group of highly advanced beings whose origins were unknown, even to the most well-traveled scholars of the galaxy. They operated in the deepest shadows of space, leaving no trace of their existence, only their ruthless efficiency and technologically superior methods. The Veil's master plan. The Veil Syndicate's goals were shrouded in mystery, But one thing was clear: they wanted to destabilize the galaxy, to create chaos where the Federation had worked so hard to establish order. The question was why, and more importantly, how had they remained hidden for so long? Lyra and her crew investigated the ruins of the colony, searching for any clue that might reveal the Syndicate's true intentions. What they found was a chilling discovery. In the wreckage of a destroyed city, they uncovered the remnants of a strange device, a beacon. It wasn't an ordinary communications relay. This device had been constructed with technology that seemed to bend the very fabric of spacetime itself, capable of distorting signals and creating powerful gravitational anomalies. "What in the galaxy is this?" Commander Rax asked, inspecting the wreckage of the device. "This isn't Dominion technology. It's not even from our galaxy." Lyra examined the device with a sense of growing unease. "It's a weapon, one capable of destabilizing entire systems. The Syndicate isn't just trying to take control of space, they're trying to break it apart." The implications were staggering. If the Syndicate could complete their plan, they could trigger widespread destruction, unraveling entire star systems, rendering them useless, and perhaps even leading to the collapse of the Federation itself. "We can't let them finish this," Lyra said, her voice filled with urgency. "If they have more of these devices, we'll need to find them, and fast." The race against time. The Federation launched a large-scale operation to track down and neutralize the remaining Veil Syndicate devices. The warships that had once fought the Dominion were now being tasked with a new kind of battle, one that would take them into the furthest reaches of known space. Lyra and the Sovereign led the charge, tracking down leads that had surfaced through the galaxy's network of rebels, smugglers, and informants. As they approached a massive, abandoned mining station in an uncharted sector, Lyra's instincts screamed that they were getting close to the heart of the Veil Syndicate. The station itself was eerily quiet, its halls abandoned, yet the deeper they went, the more ominous the feeling became. It wasn't until they reached the core of the station that they encountered their first true confrontation. A group of Veil Syndicate operatives appeared, their bodies cloaked in a strange shimmering material that seemed to warp the light around them. They were fast, and their weapons, silent and deadly, tore through the Federation's forces with terrifying precision. But Lyra wasn't backing down. "Prepare to fight," she commanded, rallying her crew. "We're not leaving without answers." The truth behind the veil. After a grueling battle, the Sovereign's crew managed to overpower the Veil Syndicate operatives and breach the station's central hub. It was here, in the heart of the Syndicate's operations, that Lyra and her team made a shocking discovery. The Veil Syndicate was not just a group of outlaws. They were the remnants of an ancient race, an advanced species that had once ruled an entire galaxy long before the rise of the Dominion. They were known as the Zalrix. The Zalrix had been defeated in their own galaxy by their own creations, machines that turned against them, causing the downfall of their empire. With their technology, they had crossed over into the Milky Way, hoping to rebuild their empire. They had been operating in the shadows for centuries, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The beacon devices were part of a larger, catastrophic plan to destabilize the galaxy and bring it under their control. "We were waiting for a moment like this," said Zalric's leader, Zorith, as he revealed himself to Lyra. "The Federation has grown too powerful, too unified. The galaxy needs to be remade. We will be the ones to rule it again." Lyra's eyes hardened. "You're wrong. We will stop you. We've built something that will never be undone, not by you, not by anyone." The final battle. With the truth behind the Veil Syndicate exposed, the Federation launched a final, all-out assault on their stronghold. The Sovereign and its fleet, now joined by allied forces from across the galaxy, fought their way to the heart of the Syndicate's power. The battle was unlike any before it, fought not just in the vastness of space, but within the very fabric of reality itself. The Syndicate had activated their final weapon, a massive distortion device capable of bending spacetime on a galactic scale. It was a race against the clock as Lyra and her crew boarded the Syndicate's flagship, the Requiem, to stop the weapon from activating. In a desperate final confrontation, Lyra faced Zorith, the leader of the Zalrix. The fight was brutal, the stakes higher than ever before. The Syndicate's forces were overwhelming, but Lyra's determination, backed by the legacy of the Sovereign, drove her forward. With a final, devastating blow, she destroyed the core of the Requiem, stopping the device from going online. As the ship exploded, the remaining Veil Syndicate forces were scattered, their plans in ruins. The end of the Veil Syndicate. With the Veil Syndicate dismantled, the galaxy was safe once more. However, the true legacy of the Sovereign was not just in the victories won, but in the lessons learned. Peace was never easy, and threats would always arise, but as long as the Federation stood united, no force in the galaxy could ever truly threaten its feuders.